Folks, legal precedent has just been set in arguably the most important high-profile case of my generation. The verdict was not guilty, cementing your sacred right to defend your body from vicious assailants who plan to do you harm. And to celebrate that day as well as support this YouTube channel and all the coverage we do on these important issues, I present the Not Guilty merch set. It's a great way to support the channel. Links in the description. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Now, I really want to talk about privilege. It's a concept, of course, we've talked about a million different times, but non-stop, all we are hearing from the media right now, all we are hearing from activists, and frankly, all we've been hearing, is what if Kyle Rittenhouse was black? They know for absolute certainty that he would be convicted or he wouldn't be alive. The only reason he was allowed out on bail, and the only reason he wasn't shot on sight, was due to his skin color and the privilege it provides. But what if I told you, probably unsurprising at least for you, that that's a bunch of BS? And in fact, I might even argue that the opposite is true. I don't know how two things can be true at the same time. How can white male privilege be such a powerful phenomenon, be essentially a cheat code for life, while we live in a culture that constantly demonizes, attacks, and villainizes white males? The truth is actually the opposite of whatever all the talking heads are saying. And so like usual, like we always do, we're gonna get to the bottom of this. We're gonna get to the truth. But of course, before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so let's first start off with the leftist narrative, which is of course, as usual, as predictable as it can be. More white privilege, more racism, but what if he were black?
If Kyle Rittenhouse was a black man, this would be very different.
I do still feel very strongly if he was a different ethnicity or people group, yeah, he'd be gone. It wouldn't be no he's a hero and this, that, and the third.
This is a double murder trial. What are we talking about? So no, we have a lot of work to do. If you imagine for a moment if that were a young black man, first of all, he probably would have come out in an orange, in his orange suit, because he would have been coming from the jail cell.
Imagine if Kyle Rittenhouse was an 18 or 17-year-old black kid.
Well, that's a different issue.
With a gun.
That. Talk about that.
Right. How would people feel? How would the judge treat him?
Speculating constantly that if he was black, the outcome would be different. They say it with absolute certainty. Even Bubba Wallace tweeted this, let the boy be black, and it would have been life. Hell, he would have had his life taken away before the BS trial. Sad. Then Kamala Harris chimes in, claiming there's a lot of work that needs to be done to create a more equitable justice system.
I have questions about the verdict, and the verdict really speaks for itself. As many of you know, I've spent a majority of my career working to make the criminal justice system more equitable, and clearly there's a lot more work to do. Thanks all.
She goes as far to say that she's worked on that in her career when her track record as a prosecutor includes illegally planting evidence on individuals, withholding evidence, and putting away hundreds of black men, maybe even thousands, for non-violent drug offenses. I mean, what an absolute clown. But of course, they continue to make this whole Kyle Rittenhouse thing about white privilege and race, which let's just say immediately doesn't end well, considering on the exact same day as Democrats are pushing this narrative, we get this. Breaking. Andrew Coffey IV found not guilty of murder, attempted murder in Indian River County SWAT raid. An Indian River County man on trial in connection with a deadly 2017 SWAT raid in Gifford was found not guilty of 5 of the 6 charges on Friday. Andrew Coffey IV was charged with second-degree murder of his 21-year-old girlfriend and 3 counts of attempted murder of law enforcement after the raid led to an exchange of gunfire. He was acquitted on all charges except for one, based on what claim? The claim of self-defense. Womp womp womp. Another leftist narrative bites the dust now, doesn't it? Well, of course not, because liberals are arguing that you can't compare the two, and that still somehow racial prejudice played a role against Andrew Coffey. This Twitter individual right over here writes, folks equating Andrew Coffey and Kyle Rittenhouse. SWAT raided Andrew Coffey's home and took his girlfriend's life. He fired back in self-defense. He was acquitted of serious charges, but faces 30 years for having an illegal gun. Notice the difference? And let's focus specifically on the final part there. Notice the difference. difference. I do actually notice the difference. Andrew Coffey had an illegal firearm. Kyle didn't. Also, the weapons charge in Kyle's case was a misdemeanor. The weapons charge in Andrew Coffey's case is possession of a firearm as a convicted felon. This article right over here from the TC Palm puts it all into perspective. Coffey family's criminal history dates back decades in Indian River County. The Coffey family has become well known to law enforcement officials over the past 4 decades. It's not just Andrew Coffey IV, it's Andrew Coffey III, Andrew Coffey Jr., dating back to the 1980s. Criminal activity and criminal records that have spanned decades and generations, as well as what's being described as a propensity for violence against law enforcement. Our recent interactions with Coffey IV show that he has had a propensity for violence against law enforcement, Flowers said. No respect for law enforcement whatsoever. And to continue putting things into perspective, it follows up by saying we are simply trying to clean up the streets, and they continue to commit crimes in our area, which we will not tolerate. We're done. And take a look right over here, criminal histories of the Coffey men. Andrew Coffey Jr., who's 54 years old. Crime period from 1981 to 2016, arrests 23, charges 31, convictions 8. Andrew Coffey III, 37, crime period 1995 to 2016, arrests 30, charges 59 and convictions 14. Andrew Coffey IV, 23, crime period 2007 to 2016, arrests 16, charges 27 and convictions 8. So if you really think about it, if you really put it into perspective, what this individual Jeffrey Reddick said earlier, notice the difference. I do, but it's the exact opposite narrative that leftists are trying to promote. It seems as though Kyle Rittenhouse was actually treated much worse. He was charged when he had no business being charged, when it was clear-cut self-defense. There was evidence withheld from the defense team, there were lies, and an entire media campaign hell-bent on putting him away for life, including during the trial itself and during jury deliberation, promoting Gage Grosskreutz on a media tour where he lied about the events. So I actually do notice the difference. The difference is, one person had an untainted, fair trial without prejudice and without media slander, Andrew Coffey, the black man, but the young white boy Kyle Rittenhouse was treated like absolute dirt, slandered and called a white supremacist in every name in the book by you leftist goons. The misinformation is just so absolutely rampant that people literally still believe that Kyle Rittenhouse's case somehow had something to do with race, and that Kyle Rittenhouse was a mass shooter targeting black Americans. Take a look at this from The Independent. Kyle Rittenhouse cleared of murder after shooting dead 2 Black Lives Matter protesters, with the full story synopsis saying teenager who shot, quote, 3 black men with rifle found not guilty on all charges. Kyle Rittenhouse didn't shoot a single black person. Here is a Twitter user who doesn't have a check mark and isn't a public figure, so will hide their identity. Kyle Rittenhouse, after he was found not guilty on killing 2 black men. Hashtag BLM, hashtag Black Lives Matter. Here's another Twitter user who has a check mark, so will leave his identity open. The fix was in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Judge Bruce Schroeder did everything in his power to ensure the acquittal of a murderer who will now parlay his fame into a career as a right-wing rock star. It only cost him 3 black lives. First of all, only 2 people lost their lives, and once again, none of them were black. But because of the prejudice, not white male privilege, but the prejudice against white male conservatives, this type of misinformation, slander, flat-out propaganda has spread like wildfire. The what if he were black narrative is total BS. Who remembers this case right over here? Timothy Simpkins brings a gun to school, shoots 4 people, including a teacher. His bail is set at $25,000 and released the next day. Kyle Rittenhouse shoots 3 criminals in self-defense. Bail is set at $2 million, harassed by state prosecutors and the news media to this day. Oh, but what if he were black? The narrative is bogus. In fact, white male privilege is such a non-factor here, and the complete opposite is true, that the DOJ, the Department of Justice, is told by Democrat House Judiciary Chair Representative Jerry Nadler to review federal charges for Kyle Rittenhouse after the jury found him not guilty on all counts. Representative Jerry Nadler writes on Twitter, "This heartbreaking verdict is a miscarriage of justice and sets a dangerous precedent which justifies federal review by DOJ. Justice cannot tolerate armed persons crossing state lines, literally didn't happen, looking for trouble while people engage in First Amendment protected protest." And so now we even have Democrats threatening federal charges against Kyle Rittenhouse, which continues to show that white male privilege doesn't exist. Well, certainly doesn't exist, at least if you're a conservative or even perceived as such. It's not so much privilege as much as it's discrimination and open discrimination. Joy Reid says Kyle Rittenhouse, Brett Kavanaugh are Karens who've used their male white tears to defend themselves as soon as they got caught. And here is where the dynamic that liberals have been mentioning actually applies. What if she had changed the white to black? Well, there would be outrage from shore to shore. And so the narrative is not so much as what if he were black, but rather, what if we changed everything that liberals were saying and all the rhetoric surrounding whiteness to blackness? What would the reaction truly be? That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.